Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely dramatic exploration of a singular, one-time occurrence in the history of the universe. We are looking at an event that sits at the absolute focal point of cosmic evolution, a profound sacrifice made specifically to secure the future of human consciousness. Through the insights preserved in the records we'll be looking at, we're going to approach this profound mystery with the reverence it deserves. We'll be uncovering the vast, awe-inspiring spiritual mechanics behind what is often called the mystery of Golgotha. Let's get started.
Okay, let's dive into this. The records refer to a sublime cosmic entity, a spirit of the sun, known as the light of the world. Now, you might be wondering, when did this being exist? Well, this was long before the dawn of earthly human life on our planet. We're talking about a profound wisdom and a universal radiance that far exceeds the grasp of ordinary human thought. This wasn't a being born of earthly lineage. Instead, it was a cosmic presence deeply united with the sun's existence, preparing for an absolutely immense task.
As we explore these spiritual heights, we find this radiant sun being moving through the realms of the highest hierarchies, specifically the spirits of wisdom, love, and will. These exalted ranks, known as the seraphim, cherubim, and thrones, operate under the immediate gaze of the Godhead. The majestic sun being shared in this completely transcendent existence. Just imagine channeling fiery love, soaring wisdom, and an absolute cosmic will that pulses through the universe as pure creative power.
Let's move to the next step and see how this builds, because as humanity progressed through the ages, a monumental crisis emerged. The Earth had become the stage for a grand evolutionary development, sure, but humanity suddenly faced an impending spiritual doom. The actual structural integrity of the human being began to severely deteriorate. This was a crisis that threatened to completely derail the entire purpose of our existence on this planet.
To truly grasp this crisis, we need to understand the intended architecture of the human form. Originally, divine spirits provided a perfect spiritual foundation, an archetype often called the phantom. Think of it as the ultimate, incorruptible blueprint. This spiritual body was designed to hold the human physical form together in absolute equilibrium, perfectly balancing the forces of construction and destruction within us.
However, that perfect balance was tragically disrupted. Ancient influences, identified in these traditions as Luciferic forces, introduced the possibility of error and evil directly into the human soul. Because of this intervention, the spiritual form, the phantom, began to lose its integrity. It became deeply disorganized, and consequently, the physical body was subjected to an unnatural level of decay and dissolution, breaking down the very vessel that was meant to house human consciousness.
So the crucial point here is the devastating consequence of this decay. Without intervention, it threatened to completely extinguish the spark of individual self-awareness. You see, the ego, which is the specific crowning achievement of human Earth evolution, relies on the physical form to reflect its own consciousness back to itself. As the physical body increasingly succumbed to decay, the human ego was in very real danger of vanishing into complete darkness the moment the physical body returned to the Earth.
To prevent this absolute loss of consciousness, the cosmic sun being undertook the greatest rescue mission imaginable. By descending from the vastness of the spiritual world, this entity mapped out a continuous trajectory of salvation. It's an incredible journey, scaling down from eons of cosmic existence to a single pivotal moment at the baptism in the Jordan, followed by 3 years living among humanity. That path culminated in the profound 3 days from the cross to the grave and finally secured eternity through the resurrection of the human spiritual form.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the exact mechanics of that intervention. At the precise moment of the baptism in the Jordan, a very specific spiritual transaction occurred. The human ego that had occupied the prepared vessel of the man from Nazareth actually departed. This stepping aside allowed the remaining layers of the human form, the physical, the life-giving etheric, and the emotional astral sheaths, to be entirely permeated by the divine presence of the cosmic spirit.
From that moment onward, right up until the final event on the cross, this entity lived a completely unique existence. He lived as a man among men, moving through the world, yet remained entirely independent of a standard human ego. The vessel was inhabited not by a reincarnating human soul, but by the cosmic sun being itself, operating directly within the limitations of earthly flesh.
It is absolutely crucial to recognize that the culmination of this path wasn't found in spoken teachings alone.
While the words and teachings were undeniably profound, the true rescue mission required a monumental action. It required the voluntary, profound experience of actual death. It was only through this physical death that the spiritual form could be fully engaged and fundamentally repaired.
When this being rose from the grave, a monumental shift had occurred in the history of the universe. It wasn't the corruptible, material substance of flesh that ascended. Rather, it was the perfected, incorruptible phantom, the spiritual form body that had been fully rescued from the forces of destruction. The perfect archetype, which had been lost since the dawn of earthly existence, was completely and totally restored.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ongoing effect of that victory. This risen body now acts much the way a biological cell does, multiplying invisibly. It exists as a spiritual origin point. Just as humanity inherited a decaying physical form from ancient antiquity, individuals can now receive a restored spiritual organization descending directly from this incorruptible spiritual cell.
By establishing an interconnection with this event, we can clothe ourselves in this restored spiritual organization. And the shift this creates is just awe-inspiring. Consciousness can remain illuminated even after death. The earth transforms into a cosmos where freedom and love are the guiding principles. The spark of the ego isn't just saved, it's given the absolute foundation to ascend. Now, this sacrifice fundamentally differs from ancient religious compulsions. This act did not exert compulsion or overwhelm the human will with divine power. Not at all. The cosmic power provided by this event can only be accessed entirely through absolute human freedom. It requires your own voluntary inner resolve to unite with this truth. Through this union, humanity is maturing into something entirely unprecedented in the cosmos. We are actually evolving into the 10th hierarchy, the spirits of freedom and love. Unlike the higher hierarchies who act out of immediate, unyielding obedience to the divine gaze, humanity is learning to carry out its own impulses born entirely from inner freedom. There is a deeply profound and poetic realization here. Because humanity can now choose to unite with this power of its own free resolve, we possess the capacity to rise above the ancient shadows of error. Over time, humanity will even be able to redeem the very luciferic forces that originally introduced the obstacles leading toward decay. The tempters themselves will eventually be freed by the humanity they once entangled.
This sacrifice remains the focal point of the universe, ensuring that the human journey toward spiritual maturity continues to ascend toward the heights of wisdom and light. It leaves us to ponder the ultimate responsibility of our own individual awareness. So, I'll leave you with this thought. Will you choose to unite with this power of your own free resolve and clothe yourself in the light of the world? Thank you for joining me for this explainer.